I wanted to give you guys a quick update on my situation with Genesis, with the GV80 right behind me. As some of you might know, I ended up doing a video with my nightmare experience with the service of the Genesis GV80, and I specifically spoke about the sunroof situation that happened about 2 years ago, and at the same time I also spoke about the recent battery situation, which the battery died on me for the second time this year. If you guys are interested and want to know what's been happening so far, stay tuned. So guys, let's strap in and take a look. So if you guys watched the last video titled Genesis GV80 My Nightmare Service Experience, or something along those lines, I spoke about my general experience, or two specific experiences that I encountered with my Genesis 2021 Genesis GV80, and how I found it to be unfair and unjust how I basically had to cover for the cost of the replacement of the sunroof, which happened about 2 years ago. They told me that it was a highway chip. And more recently, what happened this year was that in May of this year, I ended up having an issue with my battery where my battery ended up dying in my garage, and I drive this car every single day. After some additional research, I got to find out that there's a lot of other people that have encountered the same battery issues with their Genesis vehicles, not only the GV80, but across all models. And at the same time, I've also noticed that the sunroof situation has been a common issue as well, not only with Genesis models, but amongst the entire Hyundai motor group as well. I showed you guys a bar graph of the car companies that have the most or the highest number of cracked sunroof or cracked panoramic roofs, and no coincidence, it ended up being Hyundai. Long story short, what ended up happening after my last video, surprisingly, and guys, before I even get into this, my intent of doing this video was not to get anything out of Genesis. Frankly speaking, my intent was to just create awareness amongst current owners and potential prospective owners as well. And I noticed from some of you in the comments, you've thanked me. I'm glad that is helpful for some of you. For some of you prospective owners, you've shared in the comments that you were considering either a Genesis GV70 or a GV80. And because of my experience, now you've come to the conclusion of maybe not moving forward with Genesis, but instead maybe going to a competitor like Lexus. This might change your perspective, but it's ultimately up to you guys. I'm just trying to keep you guys updated. So literally shortly after my video upload, I ended up getting contacted by Genesis Corporate, completely by surprise. In fact, Genesis Corporate wanted to investigate the whole situation and see what ended up happening with my sunroof and also with the battery, because they wanted to do sort of an investigation of what happened with me personally, and also have a discussion with the dealership that I've been dealing with. Long story short, to make it really short for you guys, what ended up happening was that I'm still in the process, but Genesis Corporate actually agreed to reimburse me for the cost of replacing my sunroof. And they said that this was due to a gesture of good faith. I personally think that it has to do with the fact that they probably noticed that this is a common issue. And at the same time, given the fact that they're a brand new brand, which started in 2017, they'd like to retain good sort of feedback and good sort of reputation amongst the luxury car brands out there like Lexus, Mercedes, BMW. So, they're so young, they're still less than a decade old. Of course, you're gonna want to try to maintain as much customer loyalty. They told me that they're gonna probably send me a check or send me a transfer to reimburse me for the cost of the sunroof. Now, in regards to the battery, they said that they couldn't do anything because that's still an ongoing issue. And it seems to me like there's been some massive sort of, miscommunication between myself and the dealership. They also mentioned that the dealership didn't really follow the exact protocol when it came to the sunroof. And at the same time, they didn't do any sort of protocol when it came to the battery. Now what ended up happening is that since corporate actually had a discussion with the dealership, now what's going to happen is that I'm going to get a prorated cost for replacement of the battery, which is, I think I have 12 months remaining on my warranty. So they're going to cover 12 months, or if not a little bit more than 12 months of my battery cost. And then I have to cover whatever I've already used up during that warranty period. Aside from that, as a gesture of good faith, the dealership said that they were gonna replace the battery free of charge, which I find is fine, but at the end of the day, I find that it's a little bit odd that the service manager of the dealership I was dealing with had told me personally that they replaced the battery. Of course, when the discussion and the investigation was going through with corporate, he doesn't remember anything. And naturally, since there's no documentation of that, then it's gonna be my word versus their word. I just found it weird how they didn't really tell me anything about doing a battery test and just sending me off after doing a charge of the battery. I could have done that myself. That's what ended up happening the first time, is the fact that they took in the vehicle. They said they'd run a diagnostic, battery seemed fine. They ended up doing a charge on the battery, and then they just sent me off on my way, even though I was verbally told that they replaced my battery. Now, on the second event that it happened, which happened now about 3 weeks ago, when I called the dealership to get the battery replaced, they told me that they were on back order. When I got communication from corporate told me that they spoke to the dealership. They told corporate, the dealership told corporate that they actually have the batteries in stock. And the dealership was supposed to even call me back to let me know when they would receive it. In fact, they actually even had the battery in stock when I even called them to see if I could replace the battery myself and actually and put it in myself through the dealership. So ultimately, I think what ended up happening is that there's something going on in terms of the way that the dealership operates. There's definitely miscommunication somewhere in there. I'm not sure if it was done maliciously or not. I'm not gonna say whether it was or whether it wasn't. I'm just gonna state the facts. But at the end of the day, I wanna end it off by saying certain things. Genesis is a brand new luxury company. So of course, there's growing pains with that. Secondly, I think they made a huge mistake in entering the luxury automotive segment by not actually creating standalone dealerships. That was the initial issue that I was dealing with in regards to my experience with the Genesis vehicle, or the Genesis GV80, was the fact that I had to wait so long. Even if I wasn't using the concierge valet service, minimum time that I had to wait for a simple oil change that was covered under their plan, because they do cover the first 3 years or 48,000 miles of ownership. Minimum amount of time was a month. So of course, like I mentioned in my last video, they did resolve that because they built a standalone dealership. They still probably require a bit more time in terms of getting the right training in place for their personnel to know how to handle a luxury client, for example, or that type of demographic. Because of course you're entering a well-established market, or a well-established industry in the luxury automotive segment. So of course, like any other company or like any other business, there's always going to be growing pains, and hopefully Genesis is learning along the way. It seems like they are, because the fact that Genesis corporate reached out to me after doing the video that I did last shows their willingness to work with their clients and try to make things right. On the flip side, I'll tell you, not regarding Genesis, I used to own a BMW F90 M5. Similar type of situation where I was having massive issues with my M5. I've done multiple videos which I'll post on the screen for you guys. When I try to speak to corporate, I was done dealing with the dealership. When I try to speak with corporate and I told them about my massive engine issues, I said, look, could you guys at least give me an extended warranty on just on the engine, not even on the entire vehicle. BMW didn't even want to deal with me whatsoever. They just completely shut me down. So for that reason, I'm not going to be dealing with BMW any longer. And a lot of you that have been BMW owners, I'm sure have had similar experiences as well. So to compare and contrast between, let's say, for example, a BMW and Genesis, Genesis corporate has had a better sort of reaction to something like this, and they're willing to work with the customer. Now, are they going to continue doing that for a long period of time? We don't know. They're still new, and I think that's why they're doing this right now. Hopefully they maintain a sort of good relationship with their customers and they're willing to actually stand by their product. Another brand that does that, I find, which has been established, is Lexus. So hopefully they take Lexus as a form of example for them to move forward. But at the end of the day, I have to say that I do respect the fact that they reached out to me in order to try to rectify this. And look, at the end of the day, they managed to come to an agreement with me to cover the bigger chunk of the cost, which was my sunroof replacement as opposed to the battery. The battery is gonna cost me about maybe 350 bucks. The last thing I wanted to say, I don't know why Genesis did this, but for the battery on the Genesis GV80, I don't know on the other models, but on the GV80, they managed to make like a custom battery, which makes it very difficult to actually replace it with any other battery that you want. And what I mean by that is the terminals are reversed, so even if you get an aftermarket battery, the actual terminals that go to the positive and the negative, they're not long enough to be able to reach a regular standard battery. So you're basically stuck with them, or you have to do some sort of modification in the actual battery bay area, which I'm not willing to do, to be honest. So I don't know why they did that. Maybe some of you guys can comment in the comments below, but at the end of the day, I find that to be a little bit, I don't know if it wasn't thought well or it was maybe sketchy for people or customers to stick with them and only them. Hopefully this gives you sort of a better idea of how at least corporate deals with clients, not because every dealership is going to be different. They're independent retailers, so you know, everybody's experience with a specific dealership is going to be different, and that's really up to that specific retailer or owner of the retailer and how they want to deal with clients. But at least from a corporate perspective, it looks like Genesis is willing to stand by their product and work with its customer base. So hopefully this helped you guys out, gave you a little bit better insight, and I can tell you that I'm relatively happy that they managed to do that and reach out to me in regards to at least resolving part of my issues. If you guys have any comments, make sure to put it down below in the comments, and make sure to take a look at some of my other videos. Make sure to subscribe, like the video if you enjoyed this or you found it informative, and stay tuned for other videos in the future. I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks guys, take care, bye-bye.